Can a single belief lead you to a slow death, either in the jungles of the Amazon or the frozen mountains of Oregon? Imagine believing in something so deeply that you leave your home, your job, your family, and your life savings. Imagine that belief becomes an obsession, and that obsession becomes an inescapable fate. Today, you will hear two true stories of people who fell into the trap of their own blind faith. But while one searched for a legendary lost city beneath the earth, the other waited for salvation from the sky, and both paid the ultimate price. If you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, you've come to the right place. We upload new stories 2, 3, sometimes even 4 times a week, so hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on all notifications so you never miss an episode. Now, take a deep breath, because these two journeys may change the way you think about faith itself. In the fall of 1980, 28-year John Reed lived in a small apartment in San Francisco. He was a simple shipping clerk, but his entire life changed the moment he came across a strange book. The book was called The Chronicle of Akor by journalist Carl Booger. It claimed the existence of a lost city deep in the Amazon rainforest, a city older than ancient Egypt itself. They were descendants of actual gods who descended from the heavens. 12,000 years ago, when European conquerors arrived, the Akor people did not perish like the Aztecs or Incas. Instead, they went underground, rebuilding their capital in a maze of tunnels and caverns, and they are still there today, guarding a sacred treasure beyond imagination. Most people laughed at the book, calling it pure fiction, but John was not like most people. He read the book once, then twice, then 5 times. He memorized the entire chapters. He slept with the book on his chest. He began saving every penny from his small paycheck for a journey to the Amazon. John didn't have a large family, just his elderly mother and his sister Sandy, who worked in sales. Sandy loved him deeply, and she watched as he slowly transformed from an ordinary young man into someone consumed by a single idea. She tried to stop him. "John, it's just a fantasy book," she said, but he always replied, "You haven't read it, you can't understand." In November 1980, after years of saving, the day finally came. John packed a small bag, bought a plane ticket to Brazil, and then a small boat from the city of Manaus to the remote village of Barcelos. The boat trip took 2 full days. The vessel cut through the Rio Negro, one of the Amazon's giant tributaries. Around him stretched an endless wall of giant trees, the sounds of unknown animals, scorching heat, and suffocating humidity. But John wasn't afraid. He felt like he was on a pilgrimage. Barcelos was a simple, poor village. Crumbling wooden houses, dirt roads, a single telephone for all 3,000 residents. But it was the only place where you could find Tatunka Nara, the legendary chief of the Uga Mongola tribe. Tatunka was famous in the region. It was said he had led an expedition with the renowned explorer Jacques Cousteau, and that he had saved the lives of 10 Brazilian soldiers after their plane crashed in the jungle. But, most importantly, Tatunka was the only living person who had supposedly visited. Akor knew its location. John met him on the veranda of a small hotel. Tatunka was a lean, shirtless man with a turtle tattooed on his chest, exactly as described in the book. His eyes were deep and sharp, his voice soft and fragmented in heavily accented English. They talked for days. Tatunka told stories of Akor, golden tunnels, living statues, self-illuminating caverns, treasures beyond imagination. Each story pulled John deeper into the fantasy. He felt his entire life had been leading to this moment. On the 10th day, something changed. John sat with Tatunka on the veranda as usual, but this time, the chief didn't start talking. There was a long, heavy, unusual silence. John's heart pounded. This was the day the secret would be revealed. After what felt like hours, Tatunka began to speak in a barely audible voice. "Akor, not for everyone. Who goes there may not come back." John trembled, but his curiosity was stronger than his fear. He insisted, "I'm ready. Take me to..." Tatunka looked at him for a long time. Then he said something strange. "Germans do not like Akor." John didn't understand. He dismissed it as a vague joke from an old jungle dweller. The next day, John left with Tatunka into the jungle. He told no one exactly where he was going. He didn't send any letters or messages, not that he could have, since Barcelos had no internet, but he also didn't tell his sister Sandy any details about the route. That was the last time John Reed was ever seen alive. Months passed, then years. At first, John's letters arrived regularly. He wrote excitedly about the beauty of the Amazon, his awe of Tatunka, his confidence that he was close to finding Akor. Then suddenly, the letters stopped. The last message arrived in late 1980, written in his hurried handwriting. Sandy, I'm within reach of something that will change history. Don't worry about me. If you don't hear from me for a while, it means I may have decided to stay here forever. I love you. At first, Sandy was worried, but as the years went by, she began to convince herself that John had actually achieved his dream. Maybe he found Akor and decided to live underground with its people. Maybe he was happy though. That's what she told herself whenever sadness crept in. That went on for 9 full years, until one spring evening in 1989. Sandy was returning home from work, exhausted. She stopped at the mailbox, as usual. Among the bills and flyers, a blue envelope with a German postmark caught her eye. She didn't know anyone in Germany. She opened it with shaking hands. She began to read. Dear Ms. Reed, I am a German detective writing to you about your brother, John Reed. We are investigating the disappearance and death of at least 3 people in the Amazon rainforest, including a German citizen. All of them were searching for a legendary city called Akor, based on a completely fabricated book. We believe your brother may be the 4th victim. Brazilian authorities are uncooperative. We cannot access the evidence. I wanted you to know we have not forgotten your brother's case. The letter fell from Sandy's hands. She was shaking uncontrollably. Her brother hadn't disappeared to live a legendary life underground. Her brother had likely been killed. Sandy didn't hesitate for a single second. She quit her sales job. She withdrew her entire life savings, about $12,000. She bought a plane ticket to Brazil and brought a small tape, recorded to document everything she heard. She arrived in Manaus in June 1989. The city was huge and chaotic, the gateway to the Amazon. But she wasn't there for sightseeing. She was there to find her brother. She began interviewing locals, police, fishermen, merchants. At first, everyone was cooperative, but whenever she mentioned the name Akor, their faces changed. They whispered, "Don't ask about that, it's dangerous." Or looking for Akor means looking for death. The stories were completely contradictory. One person said he had seen a white man matching John's description just a week earlier on the outskirts of Manaus. Another claimed John's bones had been found deep in the jungle years ago, that he had been shot in the head. A third said John was still alive, living with a remote tribe, refusing to return to the modern world. Each story gave Sandy hope, then cruelly snatched it away. At night, she returned to her cheap hotel, exhausted, and dreamed of John. He appeared to her like a ghost, looking at her with sad eyes, saying, "Akor is not what I thought it would be, Sandy, not what they told me." She woke up every morning in tears, but more determined than ever. After 3 weeks in Manaus, her money was running out. She was about to return to America, empty-handed. But before she left, she heard a name repeated in multiple accounts, Tatunka. She was told Tatunka was still alive, still living in Barcelos, and that he might be the only one who knew the truth. But Sandy was afraid. Everyone she spoke to warned her about this man. They said he was the most dangerous person in the region, but she had no other lead. She returned to America. She cleaned houses for months to save money. Then on June 21st, 1990, exactly 1 year after her first trip, she returned to Brazil. This time, she didn't come alone. She brought a documentary producer and a reporter. She wanted witnesses. She wanted protection. Their small plane landed in Barcelos. She asked for Tatunka. Locals pointed her to a small hotel surrounded by a wooden fence. On the veranda sat a lean, shirtless man with a turtle tattoo on his chest. She approached him. She showed John's photo. She began explaining in broken Portuguese. "I'm his sister. I'm looking for him. I want to know what happened." Tatunka smiled. Then he said a sentence that froze her blood. "I was wondering when you would come. You are very late." But as she looked at him, she felt something strange. His movements, his tone, his posture, none of it resembled an Amazonian tribal chief. There was something European about him, something German. After hours of conversation, and with help from the German detective who connected with the documentary team, the shocking truth was revealed. Tatunka Nara was never Amazonian at all. His real name, Gunter Hawk, a German national. He had fled Germany in the 1960s to avoid paying child support to his ex-wife. He arrived in the Amazon, speaking no Portuguese, with a thick German accent. How does a German disappear into the Brazilian jungle? Simple, he invented a new identity. He fabricated the entire story of the lost city of Akor from scratch. He wove a complex legend about an underground civilization, gods and treasures, And when journalist Carl Buger took the story seriously and wrote a book about it, the legend became truth in the minds of naive adventurers like John Reed. Why did he do it? Because tourists who came searching for Akor were his livelihood. He rented them boats, sold them food and lodging, took them on fake jungle tours. The problem arose when some of them, like John, insisted on actually going to Akor. And then, as Sandy and the German detective believe, Gunther eliminated them. John Reed's body was never found. Gunther Hawk was never formally charged due to lack of evidence and uncooperative Brazilian authorities. But in 1984, journalist Carl Buger was shot dead in Rio de Janeiro. The killer was never caught. Was Gunther behind it? No one knows. And here's the strangest twist. As of the latest verified information in 2024, Gunther Hawk is still alive, still living in still running his small hotel, and still telling stories of Akor to any tourist who asks. On the night of November 14th, 1994, 56-year-old Dwight Finley drove his pickup truck up a narrow, winding mountain road in Oregon. He was tired but cheerful. He had just finished a business presentation in the coastal town of Coos Bay and was heading to Grants Pass in the southern part of the state. Dwight was a traveling salesman who sold fancy camper vans. His truck was towing a demo camper behind it, completely empty inside, just a metal shell, because it was only a display model. The route Dwight chose wasn't the main highway. It was a scenic back road through a national forest, beautiful in summer. But in mid-November, it was something else entirely. An hour into the drive, snowflakes began to fall. Then they grew heavier. Then it became a full-blown blizzard. Visibility dropped to almost zero. The road turned to ice. Dwight was from sunny Los Angeles. He had driven in snow only a handful of times in his life. He had moved to Montana that summer, but hadn't yet experienced a harsh winter. This was his first real encounter with ice and snow. He drove with white knuckles, the truck sliding at every turn, the camper trailer swinging violently behind him. To his right, a rock wall. To his left, a sheer drop into a canyon. He began to pray. He was a deeply religious man. He believed God saw him, heard him, and would protect him. In a moment of lost concentration, the truck suddenly slid. Dwight did what most panic drivers do. He slammed on the brakes. That was the worst possible move. The truck slid even more, heading straight for the edge. Seconds that felt like an eternity. A large tree appeared out of nowhere, then impact, then silence. Dwight opened his eyes. He was alive, uninjured. The truck had crashed into a massive snowbank that prevented him from falling off the cliff. He got out to inspect the damage. The truck still ran. The problem, the wheels were buried in snow. He tried to reverse, nothing. The wheels just spun. Dwight believed God had saved him from certain death. Now God would save him from this situation. He sat in the truck, turned on the engine to stay warm, and began to pray again. But hours passed, then a day, then 2 days. No cars passed. The snow kept falling. By the third day, snow had completely covered the truck's windows. He couldn't see outside, but he was still warm. He melted snow to drink. He had no food, but he thought that didn't matter. God would rescue him soon. He had a yearly calendar, pens, and envelopes. He began marking off each passing day with an X on the calendar. And each evening, he wrote letters to his fiancée and his sons. Dear Mary, don't worry, I'm fine. God is with me. He saved me from falling off the cliff, and he will save me now. I'm sure someone will come soon. I love you. At first, his letters were reassuring. As days turned into weeks, his letters grew deeper. He reflected on his life, thanked God for every blessing, wrote about his love for his family. He never wrote a single word of fear, never a word of despair. After 2 weeks, he began to feel intense hunger, but he didn't die. He wondered, how am I still alive? God must be prolonging my life. After a month, the hunger was indescribably painful, but he was still alive. His faith grew stronger. After 2 months, his body was so weakened he could barely move. But he still wrote, he still marked the calendar, he still believed. On May 20th, 1995, the spring snow was slowly melting. A teenager named Jesse was driving with his girlfriend on the same mountain road. His car slid and hit a snowbank, not far from where Dwight's truck sat. As Jesse inspected his car, he noticed something odd. A few meters away, an old pickup truck, half buried in snow, with the camper behind it. He approached carefully, brushed snow off the side window, looked inside. He staggered backward in shock. He called police immediately. Inside the truck, Dwight Finley sat in the driver's seat. His body was emaciated beyond recognition. He was still holding his pen and his calendar. The last day he had marked with an X was January 19th. Dwight died of starvation and dehydration, even though he was surrounded by snow. because his body could no longer absorb water or survive without food. Investigators later determined he had lost over 50% of his normal body weight. After police investigations, something shocking was discovered. Only 150 meters from where Dwight's truck was stuck, there was a paved path. Due to the wind patterns on that side of the mountain, that path never got covered in snow. Even during the worst blizzards, the path led to a main road, and from there to a small town about an hour's walk away. If Dwight had simply gotten out of his truck on any of the 68 days he was there and walked for just 1 hour, he would have reached safety. But he didn't. He waited for salvation to come to him. He waited for a miracle. He waited for God to save him without taking a single step. In a tragic irony, his strong faith is what killed him. If he had been slightly less religious, if he had doubted just a little, if he had thought rationally, he would have gotten out and explored his surroundings. But he was completely convinced that staying put and praying was the only path to salvation. John Reed was killed by his belief in a fictional story without ever verifying its truth. Dwight Finley was killed by his belief that salvation would come to him without him having to move. Both men were kind, honest, and truly faithful, but their faith turned from a strength into a weakness, from a window into a prison, from hope into a deadly trap. The truth whispered by these two stories: faith is beautiful, but reason, curiosity, and the courage to face reality are what keep us alive. Don't be a prisoner of a beautiful story without checking its facts. Don't sit waiting for miracles when you have 2 feet that can walk. Final note, Gunther Hawk, the man who invented the city of Akor, was still alive as of the last verified update in 2024. Still in Barcelos, still saying Akor is real, and adventurers still come from all over the world to believe him. Will you be next? Let me know in the comments. Do you know someone who fell into the trap of blind faith in an untrue story? Or do you have a similar story you'd like us to tell in a future episode? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next story. Until next time, stay safe, stay rational, and don't let your dreams kill you.